Hey Barnabas.
Hey Denny.
I just saw Creed.
You did?
Yep.
So did I.
So what'd you think? Welcome everybody to a new episode of What'd You Think? And we saw a movie that you've probably already seen at this point. It's gotten a lot of buzz. It's the new 2015 7th installment in the Rocky franchise, Creed.
Yes. Is it in the Rocky franchise or is it its own franchise?
Well,
that's kind of up for debate, probably.
It's the Rocky Cinematic Universe.
Yes, it is. It does take place in the same universe for sure. And what did you think? I mean, this is a movie I never thought I'd see. I never thought would actually happen. I didn't think this would ever get made.
I remember reading on IMDb years ago the title for this on Sylvester Stallone's IMDb page. I just remember seeing Creed. And I thought, that's not what I think it is it? Click into it, read the one-sentence synopsis. A film centered around Apollo Creed's son. Mm-hmm. And I thought, this can't be happening.
Yeah, and I thought that was like the end of kind of the whole my universe, not just the Rocky universe. Because, like, you know, Rocky was done. You know, he had said his farewell. And, you know, here's a whole other movie. And Stallone is reprising his role again. It's just... It was so surreal to find out about and to like follow kind of the production of. I didn't really follow the production, but like I remember seeing like the stills and the posters and the closer it came to its release, like the less I believe it really existed. And I'm honestly still kind of there. Like I've seen the movie and I have processed it. And I've read reviews and seen other people talk about it, and it's still hard for me to accept that this movie exists. I mean, it was hard. It was hard to really know what to expect. Like, you know, I kind of thought that this movie was going to sort of be maybe a remake of the first movie, but just with, you know, different characters and the roles and it kind of was a little bit. It was still very fresh, and it's a different experience than the first one is, but it still kind of is. You know, I thought I was going to hate seeing Stallone back in the Rocky character again, thinking it was totally pointless, but it actually kind of did have its place, and by maybe halfway through the movie, I was done being shocked that this movie was happening and just enjoying it, really. And enjoying the new characters, because all the new characters are great, and enjoying how they interact with each other, and enjoying seeing the plot unfold and how, you know, Creed rises up and everything, him training and the new montages you see. Yeah.
I think it definitely borrows quite a bit of elements from the first movie to make it feel in place with that with the series. I'd say it probably has the most in common with the first movie, but it manages to take familiar elements and make them new, make them fresh. Not only update them, but also take the Rocky story, take an underdog story, essentially, somebody who is not only proving something to the world, but proving something to himself, and basically fighting his platform for expression, and basically putting a different vessel in that role. Instead of somebody who's struggling in life, who has no name, who nobody cares about, this is somebody who everybody cares about, really. He comes from money, he comes from an education, and if basically you say the word Creed, I mean, even in the real world, everybody knows Apollo Creed. Mm-hmm. So within the Rocky universe, he is the biggest boxer in the world. I'd say equivalent to like Mike Tyson. Which apparently Mike Tyson exists in the Rocky world because he's in Rocky Balboa. Yeah, so I wonder who is more popular in that world, Apollo Creed or Mike Tyson. But I think it was a really good variation of that story, of it not just being a standard boxing movie where it's about a good guy overcoming a bad guy or overcoming an obstacle, like fighting to, you know, save his mom from going bankrupt or something, or fighting to for some kind of redemption or something like that. It's his reasons for fighting are really almost like in the first movie, where it's almost more about a feeling, where it's like you Stallone in the first movie, like he really does. You get a sense of he's fighting because he's trying to prove something to himself.
Yeah, he's like trying to prove himself to himself.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what he's doing in this movie. Like this movie hits a lot of the same beats as the original Rocky movie does, but there's enough about it that is pretty different. Like, in the original Rocky movie, Rocky's a reluctant fighter, and he doesn't want to, he doesn't believe that he's going to fight Apollo Creed and everything. He, when he first goes into the office, he thinks he's just going to be like, a sparring partner or something, and he doubts himself. But in Creed, this new Creed, he sees so much in him that he wants to prove to himself and to the whole world. And so it's like, so it's the same, yet it's also the exact opposite at the same time. So this is definitely more than just a remake. It's a whole new story, whole new characters and stuff.
And Coogler somehow manages to take the established canon, essentially, saying, yes, Apollo Creed died in the ring,
yeah.
and manages to ground it in a reality that is really believable. Basically, the setup for Creed's character, Adonis, his name is Adonis Creed. He goes by Adonis Johnson, though, because essentially he is he was born from an affair that Apollo had with his wife. So basically he grows up fatherless, not knowing who his birth mother is either.
Yeah, she dies when he's really young. So it doesn't say how young, but probably like, a toddler.
Mm-hmm. And it isn't until basically he's well into his adolescence that that Apollo's wife finds out about him and sort of decides to raise him as her own child. And it really grounds the character in, okay, this is a kid who didn't have a father, didn't have a mother, but has this drive, has this gene in him, has this need to fight.
I like what you said of how it grounds, the whole Creed dying in the ring in reality, because the whole Rocky IV movie seems like it's above the street level that that Rocky originally started in. Because the original Rocky movie is about the streets, and it's a really gritty movie, but by Rocky IV, it's nothing like that at all. There's
more akin to one of Stallone's action spectacles at the time.
He's basically like a superhero in that movie, not even like a human that he was.
Yeah,
in the first few Rocky movies.
Literally ends the Cold War.
Yeah, literally does. And so everything about Rocky IV just doesn't seem real. And I don't mean to try to rip on Rocky IV. I fucking love Rocky IV.
It's great in its own way.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that so much of the plot of this new movie that is more like the first Rocky film, like the whole plot of this movie is derived from Rocky IV. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
I didn't think that I would see those human elements that I saw in Rocky 1 in Rocky 4, and now I kind of do.
We've been comparing it to the Rocky films in the franchise, and naturally it's going to lend itself to that, because I think the main appeal of this movie for a lot of people is that it's a sequel. It is essentially a sequel, but also a reboot. But I feel like anybody could go into this movie not even having heard of the Rocky movies, and this film completely stands on its own as a character-driven drama, and it really, really works as a story you can immediately get engaged in, immediately relate to the characters. The performances are outstanding across the board. Michael B. Jordan in the lead as Adonis Johnson, which we didn't mention. He goes by Johnson basically because he doesn't want to use the Creed name to further himself in his life.
He wants to build his own name. Isn't that like his mother's maiden name, or his adopted mother? Like, Creed's wife, not the one who he had the affair with. I forget.
It's a fittingly generic name to try and think like it's going to be that much more difficult to make it, because he literally, without the name Creed, nobody cares about him, and he's worth nothing without that name. And that's kind of the significance of the title too. It isn't just a label. Like, it isn't just he's Creed because he's Creed. It's a big thematic struggle throughout the film of, does he carry this burden? Does he carry this name?
Much of the movie is about identity. Like, is he his father's son? Like, at first he, like, really is like, no, I'm not. I don't even know who that guy is. Yet he's a boxer, and the boxing is just something he's so naturally good at. And so it's about, like, trying to find out where he came from and who he is and his past, and even a past that he had before he was even born, and all this stuff. It's just this legacy Creed. So the title is more than just to get Rocky fans to go, hey, let's go see that new Creed movie. Like, it actually carries a lot of weight.
Basically, he travels to Philadelphia in the movie. He's in L.A., I think.
Yeah, he starts out in L.A. in first Creed's home.
Yeah, and Apollo Creed, I believe, is from L.A. I don't, because he doesn't really go to...
the gym he was, the gym he trained in was in L.A., his house in L.A.
Yeah. So it's interesting of, like, it's not really a movie about him getting back to his roots because he trains in Philadelphia. So then it becomes about something else, about trying to kind of get at something deeper, I think. Of finding, basically hearing the stories about his father and kind of knowing symbolically what Rocky Balboa means to his father, Apollo Creed, and that kind of drive that was instilled in him and basically brought the best out of him. He kind of goes to Philadelphia seeking that. Of, like, this guy is going to bring something out of me that I didn't know was there. And it's kind of an early plot development of why Rocky's even in this movie, is that he's basically that figure to Adonis, that if I can convince him to train me, I think that passion will come out of me, and that like, I guess if I may use the phrase "eye of the tiger," that's going to be the key to my success. I don't have to use the Creed name.
Yeah, and
I could find that passion.
That's where, like, I was really nervous going into the movie because I knew Stallone was going to be Rocky again, and so I was afraid the whole movie I was going to say, there is absolutely no fucking point to have Rocky in this movie. It is just to cash in on the success of the other movies or something, but it actually really does have a place. And because Rocky is the only person who can train Adonis to become great, like, he really is. I mean, I still kind of have some reservations about it, honestly, but it does fit in the movie. It does work. My only objections is I really didn't feel like I learned anything more about the Rocky character.
I would disagree with that.
What did you learn about Rocky that you didn't already know about the other movies? Like, that's something that's been eating me up. I was like, I think I honestly got everything from the other movies.
God, it has probably one of the most heartbreaking lines in any of the Rocky movies, and Stallone. Like, so if Stallone doesn't get nominated for Best Supporting Actor, I would be pretty disappointed, because I've been a big fan of the Rocky series for a long time, and that character, there's just something about that character that speaks so deeply to me, and I think to just a national conscious, a worldwide conscious, that there's just something so endearing about this character and something so special when Stallone plays it. And there's just such a heartbreaking line in this movie where he's you leave off Rocky Balboa in a place where his character has closure, his life has closure, really. He there's that line at the end of the movie where he says the beast is gone, his reason to fight is gone, basically. But there's a line in Creed where it's something to the effect of, like, Paulie's gone, Adrian's gone, Mickey's gone, everything in my life is moved on, but I'm still here. And the way he says it, it's such a simple line, but that's the great thing about the Rocky series, is he makes simplicity profound. And the way he says it, and it comes at a really point in the movie where you realize that, Rocky really is just living in this kind of stasis, where Rocky Balboa brings a satisfying conclusion to the series, but you really think about his life after that, and he really is kind of just living out the rest of his life, kind of pointless, really.
Yeah, see, well, I feel like, he learned all the lessons he needed to learn at the end of 6, And in this movie, I feel like he had kind of lost his way because he has lost everybody in his life. Everyone that helped him find direction in the past 6 movies. All I feel like he did in this movie is he lost his way, and then he kind of got back on track to that point where he was at the end of the 6th movie. And I'm not trying to bash on Stallone, because you're right, he deserves an Oscar nomination. He is great in this movie, and he has so many moments in this movie where, like, you know, it's really intimate. He's saying very simple lines like the one you mentioned, and it's so sad and so sincere, and only he can play it like that pitch perfect. You know, he is great in the movie. That was just the one thing, is like I didn't feel like I learned anything more about Rocky. I don't know. I feel like he did have his place in the movie, but maybe wasn't 100% necessary.
Regardless, this movie stands on its own, even though it feels in place with the franchise, and yet it stands so well on its own. It helps that Ryan Coogler approaches this with a different visual aesthetic from the other Rocky movies. It feels gritty and realistic, similar to the first film, where it really feels like, I mean, they did shoot on authentic locations in Philadelphia, a lot of the same locations as the original Rocky movie, to give it that just original flavor.
Yeah, you'll be familiar with a lot of the spots.
But just the way it looks, like it's shot in like a scope ratio, for example, to where it gives it just a different sense of staging than you've ever seen in this franchise before. And the cinematographer is different too. I wrote down her name. Maurice Alberti. She shot The Wrestler. And Darren Aronofsky got her for The Wrestler specifically because of her background in shooting documentary. And I don't recall all the documentaries she shot, but basically if you look at her IMDb and look at all the documentaries she shot, basically every great documentary ever made
of all time,
she's pretty much been the cinematographer designing the looks of them.
So she knows how to make movies look and feel very real.
Yes, and that totally just absorb you from looking at it. They did well in making this a character-driven story, of having it not be so concerned about getting from point A to point B in the story, really taking time to flesh out character beats, to have scenes that aren't necessarily integral to plot, but that just give you a sense of setting and personalities. There's a really well done love story in the movie that is basically it's kind of, it happens in a really naturalistic way, similar to the like Rocky and Adrian dynamic.
Yeah, the woman in this movie is like this movie's Adrian,
but very different from Adrian.
Very different. She's a neighbor of his. She lives just like directly under him or something, and she plays extremely loud music because she's a musician, and it pisses him off, and he goes down there to bitch her out, and then she opens the door, and like he looks at her once, like, oh wow, it's a gorgeous woman right here, and suddenly he doesn't want to bitch her out anymore. He wants to like take her out on a date, you know, and they get to know each other, and like you know, when I first saw her, I thought, oh look, it's this movie's Adrian, but it really does naturally, the relationship naturally develops, and they have a lot of just great moments of just like them looking at each other in a restaurant or laying with each other on the floor, you know, kissing. It's very intimate, like none of it seems forced at all, like because there has to be a love interest or something. She was, I don't know that actress's name, but she's really good in this. She's really good in this movie, and also she gives the movie a really great soundtrack too, because she is a really great and unique musician. I don't know how you describe her music, some sort of like hip hoppy, it's synthesized something. I'm not sure, but but she's great. Yeah,
I think this is the first film in the Rocky franchise to really get right what it would be like being in a relationship with a fighter, because it's although it's a big theme in the other Rocky films, Adrian is a very passive character, to where she voices her concerns, but in the end she knows that Rocky has to do what he has to do.
He's gonna do whatever he wants to do.
Yeah, exactly. And so she eventually like win, you know, like that's eventually her.
Rocky too. I hate that.
Win. But you don't.
The girl in this movie, she won't take a shit if she doesn't have to. She will leave the guy if it becomes too much.
Yeah, and there's a real sense of let's really think about what it would do to a person, like not just the fighter, but the important people in his lives. Like, what is that doing? Even though he's got to prove something to himself, who is he hurting by doing that, or who is he affecting? And there's even good dialogue from his mother in the film at the beginning. You see a bit of it in the trailer, but it's done even more, like aspects you don't really think about and stuff that you wouldn't even imagine them addressing in a Rocky movie.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like, I was very surprised to hear and was kind of taken aback of like, I'm really surprised they went there.
When she's talking about, like, I don't want to say it because you're about to.
Well, yeah, I'll say it. But basically, yeah, she's talking about like how, like Apollo Creed, like you hear in the trailer, like that he's gotten so beat up that she's had to carry him up the stairs, and like bruised and bloody, doesn't know where he is. But also that she's had to like wipe his ass because his hands are so bruised that he can't do anything, that she literally has to tend to him like a baby.
It's like that is something the wife would have to do.
Yeah.
Like, I feel so bad for them.
Yeah, and
honestly.
I was like, I never really thought about that.
Yeah,
that's...
And, like, it's one of those things where, when someone brings it to light, you're like, yeah, obviously, that is something that would happen, but you don't think about it. You just think, like, they fight, and at the end of the fight, they cheer, and then they go party, and they live happily ever after and everything, and, he kisses Adrian, but it's like, no, like, Adrian is going to have to, maybe she probably learns how to stitch him up and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's always icing him, wiping his ass, has to bathe him, feed him probably.
Yeah, it's the turmoil is so great on the other person in that relationship that I that's a real conflict in the movie, is like, is it really worth it for her?
Because she has her own problems, because there's that subplot where she's losing her hearing.
Well,
so she's gonna
in the movie, like she's
not like full on. She can have a conversation with somebody.
But that's kind of a part of the reason why she plays her music so loud, is that she can't hear it.
Yeah, and so just to think that she's gonna have that major handicap pretty soon in her life, so like she's gonna have all kinds of special treatment just for her, and so she's not gonna be able to tend to this other guy that, like, is going to be laying in a bed unable to move and stuff. She has her own fucking problems to deal with.
Yeah.
She may not need that kind of stress on her life.
Mm-hmm. There's two things I feel like they tried to do in the other Rocky films. One is make them cinematic, like have them follow a dramatic arc that's not like a real fight necessarily, to where they would be so exhausted by the end they can't lift their arms. They have a dramatic tension that unfolds throughout the first round to the last round, but they also try to give you access that a real boxing match wouldn't give you, like get angles that you wouldn't normally get, to sort of give you a subjective point of view in, like, sort of like the character said. Especially Rocky Balboa does this, where you get subjective sequences where Rocky gets hit on the head and suddenly he's thinking about Adrian, and you're in that head space for a couple seconds and he's back in the fight. This movie manages to really subjectively put you in Adonis's space, and also gives you access inside the ring that we've never, I don't think in any boxing movie we've ever seen, because there's a fantastic sequence that it's really his first big fight, and it's done in one long take where the camera is physically inside the ring, which I know is very difficult to do just because of the constricted space. Somehow manages to get a huge shot variety within this long sustained shot. Puts you in real time, like to where you get the full 3-minute round, bell rings, you go travel to the corner, Rocky gives him his pep talk, gives him basically a direction to go in with the round. Bell rings, he's back in the ring, you see that applied, you see the bruises basically building up in the cuts forming on his face. I honestly don't know how they did it. It was
I was wondering if there was some, I didn't spot any hidden cuts, or maybe they blended different shots together, because he does bruise up, there's makeup effects that they would have had to apply. Did they do full contact in this movie?
I honestly don't know how
I don't know. But that one sequence, was unlike anything you've ever seen in Rocky or Raging Bull or something. Mm-hmm. It was really, really amazing. Because each movie finds different ways to to bring the subjectivity to a boxing match. You know, Raging Bull has a lot of slow motion and like some exaggerated like squirting blood all over the place and stuff. But there was none of that in this. This was all real, you know, 100% full paced. Yeah. And the camera's weaving all over the place, and it's like, and it never feels restricted by the space too. You know, even though these boxers are throwing each other into corners, and there's even a ref there, and I don't know how they pulled it off. It was amazing though.
Yeah, and I also give them kudos for not resorting to using really any of the Rocky music, because they could. The way to really drive home one of those sequences, either a montage or a fight, you play the Rocky theme, ba 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 ba, and that gets your blood going. Or you play, you know, like oh, that's gonna fly now. But any of the Rocky music, they don't really resort to any of that. They play some of Rocky's music for Rocky's own scenes, but I really liked that they didn't try to give any resemblance to the previous moments or fight scenes that would basically just be banking on your nostalgia to feel like, oh, that reminds me.
Yeah, there was never a moment where it's like, oh yeah, like from Rocky 3. You know, there's never a moment like that.
It really tries hard to build its own memorable moments, and that fight scene, that long take fight scene, was something completely unique to this movie. And I feel like is one of the most memorable sequences in in any of the movies.
Yeah, in any movie, really, it was an incredible shot.
I can now see the potential in people taking this property and basically telling stories that aren't necessarily like directly like related to the Rocky story, but basically have that heart to them. What I realized,
and that's what Rocky's all about, is heart.
I realized, that making a successful film in this franchise is basically having your heart in the right place. And Coogler can do it. I feel like other people can do it. But as you said earlier, this can definitely work as a franchise, as you know, taking this character in new places, different directions.
Yeah, and didn't they already say that they're doing at least 2 more?
I believe so.
Yeah,
yes.
I forgot where I heard that. I don't know if you told me that or if I read it somewhere online, but I heard they're going to try to do at least 3 movies. So we'll have a Creed trilogy to look back on. If those are successful, maybe even more. Who knows?
All in all, Creed, a very fitting entry into this franchise. I'm really excited to see where it's going to go in the future, and it's worth your $10. Go see it in the theater.